1 minute ago, King Charles just shattered 300 years of royal protocol by publicly challenging London Mayor Sadiq Khan over migration policy. And what happened next has left Westminster in absolute chaos. The king actually invoked ancient constitutional powers that haven't been used since 1834. Khan stood speechless in front of cameras for 47 seconds, while protesters erupted across every London borough. If you want to understand how this constitutional earthquake could bring down the entire Labour government, hit that subscribe button right now, because the mainstream media is already trying to bury this story, and what we've uncovered will shock you to your core. Here's what sparked the most dramatic royal intervention in modern British history. 3 days ago at 2:15 p.m., King Charles attended what was supposed to be a routine ceremony, unveiling a memorial for Commonwealth veterans at the Imperial War Museum. His speech was carefully prepared, fully vetted by palace officials, completely safe, but Sadiq Khan wasn't there. The London mayor, who had confirmed his attendance weeks earlier, sent a junior deputy instead. His excuse, an emergency meeting about housing asylum seekers in former military barracks across East London. That decision was catastrophic, because what Khan didn't know was that King Charles had personally invited 12 decorated veterans who had been evicted from council housing to make room for recent arrivals. And when Charles saw Khan's empty chair, something inside him snapped. His exact words were chilling, and I'm going to read them to you directly from the official transcript that palace insiders leaked to us just hours ago. Standing before those homeless veterans, the king set aside his prepared remarks and spoke from his heart with barely controlled fury. I stand here today with men who bled for this nation, who sacrificed everything for the freedoms we enjoy. And I must ask a question that weighs heavily upon my conscience. When did we decide that those who built this country, who defended this country, who gave their bodies and their youth to this country, should be displaced in favor of those who have just arrived? When did British loyalty become worth less than foreign need? The response was swift and devastating. Within minutes, footage spread across social media like wildfire. Within an hour, King Charles Speaks was trending #1 globally, across 47 countries within 3 hours. Downing Street issued an emergency statement, calling the king's remarks deeply concerning and constitutionally inappropriate. But by then it was too late. The hammer had already fallen. Sources inside Buckingham Palace described the king as angrier than they've ever seen him, more determined, more willing to risk everything for what he believes is right. But here's what nobody expected, and what makes this infinitely worse for Khan. That same evening at 6:45 p.m., the king did something that completely blindsided City Hall. He invited 3 homeless veterans to a private dinner at Clarence's house. Not a photo opportunity, not a publicity stunt, but a genuine 3-hour meal where he personally listened to their stories. James Morrison, a 68-year-old Kosovo veteran, later told reporters that the king wept openly. When hearing about his eviction, he held my hand and said, "I am so deeply sorry for what my country has done to you." Morrison revealed, his voice breaking. That's my king. That's a man who understands service. But it gets even more powerful. Charles didn't stop at dinner. At 10:30 p.m. that night, he personally telephoned the chief executive of the Royal British Legion and authorized the immediate release of $5 million from his private charitable funds to establish emergency housing for displaced veterans. Across London, the palace tried to keep it quiet, but the Legion's chairman, Lieutenant General Sir James Bashaw, went public the next morning, calling it the most extraordinary act of personal compassion he'd witnessed in 40 years of military service. The optics couldn't be more devastating. While Khan slept in his comfortable tutoring home, the King of England was literally staying up past midnight, making phone calls to house homeless veterans himself. Meanwhile, British veterans who served in Iraq, Afghanistan, the Falklands, and Northern Ireland are sleeping rough on the streets of London tonight. Men like Thomas Patterson, a 71-year-old Falklands veteran who lost his leg at Goose Green, was evicted from his new council flat after 34 years. To make emergency accommodation available, he now sleeps in a doorway on Commercial Road, with a cardboard sign reading, "I fought for Britain. Britain forgot me." His daughter Sarah told us through tears that her father cries himself to sleep every night, asking what he did wrong, why his country abandoned him after everything he gave. We're talking about decorated heroes, with medals for valor living in tents, while luxury hotels across London have been converted into taxpayer-funded accommodation, centers with private security, catered meals and full medical services. while Khan's administration spends $8 million per day housing new arrivals in 4-star hotels, with on-site bathrooms and room service. We're talking about the Park Plaza, Westminster Bridge, the Holiday Inn, Kensington, the Hilton Wembley, all filled to capacity, while veterans eat from food banks. The contrast is so obscene, so morally bankrupt, that even lifelong labor supporters are turning their backs in disgust. Retired bus driver Malcolm Hughes from Dagenham posted a video that's now reached 4.2 million views. I voted Labour my whole life, 52 years, but this is not the Labour Party I knew. This is betrayal of our own people. That sentiment is spreading like wildfire across every working-class community in Britain. And wait, because there's another devastating layer to this story that's just emerging. Documents obtained from Freedom of Information requests reveal that Khan's office spent £127,000 on a luxury gala dinner at the Savoy Hotel, just 2 weeks before the veteran evictions began. The event, celebrating London's diversity and inclusion initiatives, featured champagne receptions, a 7-course meal prepared by celebrity chefs, and entertainment from West End performers. Khan himself gave a 25-minute speech about compassion and social justice, while veterans were being served eviction notices. Across the city, the guest list included dozens of charity executives, diversity consultants, and community organizers, many of whom were paid thousands in consulting fees from the same budget that couldn't find housing for British servicemen. When journalists confronted Khan's spokesman about the gala yesterday afternoon, he stumbled through a response about different budget allocations, a necessary community engagement that satisfied absolutely nobody. Social media erupted with side-by-side images. Khan in black tie, raising a champagne glass next to Thomas Patterson, sleeping rough in a doorway. The images went viral within hours, shared over 2 million times, with comments that ranged from heartbroken to absolutely furious. Then, something unprecedented happened that nobody saw coming, not even the sharpest constitutional experts. King Charles, working through private channels that bypass both the palace and the government, invoked the royal prerogative of mercy. At 9:30 p.m. yesterday at Clarence House, he personally signed emergency housing orders, redirecting 12 vacant properties owned by the Duchy of Lancaster to homeless veterans. No British servicemen will sleep on my streets. While I draw breath, Charles declared, tears visible in his eyes. According to 3 separate witnesses, the Crown exists to serve those who served. If Parliament has forgotten that duty, then I have not. Palace insiders revealed that senior advisors warned him this could trigger a constitutional crisis, that Labour would accuse him of overstepping, that Stummer might even call for abdication. Charles reportedly looked at them, with steel in his voice, and said 7 words that changed everything. Then let them try to remove me. The optics are absolutely devastating for Sadiq Khan. While the king personally housed veterans, Khan appeared on LBC radio, defending his migration policies, with statistics and bureaucratic language that made him sound cold, calculating, utterly disconnected from human suffering. The domino effect has been absolutely catastrophic. For Labour, polls showed Khan's approval rating in London collapsed from 48% to 31%. In less than 24 hours, the single largest one-day drop ever recorded for a sitting London mayor. $2.3 billion was wiped from London property markets. As investors fled uncertainty, number Khan Moscow trended for 17 consecutive hours. With over 820,000 tweets, 43 Labour MPs have now publicly distanced themselves from Khan's policies, with 12 calling for his immediate resignation. Protests erupted across Westminster Tower hamlets, New Embarking and Dagenham, with crowd estimates reaching 75,000 people. According to the Metropolitan Police Union, Jacks filled the streets alongside banners reading, "Veterans before migrants," and "Charlie, save Britain." Conservative leader Rishi Sunak immediately called an emergency debate, demanding Khan's removal from office. Even some Liberal Democrats broke ranks to condemn what they called a humanitarian disgrace. International observers from Canada to Australia praised Charles for showing moral courage. While politicians hid behind process, the political earthquake wasn't just national. It was global. But wait, because the international reaction has created another crisis that Downing Street never anticipated. Commonwealth leaders across the Caribbean, Africa, and the Pacific have started publicly praising King Charles, while suddenly criticizing British political leadership. Jamaica's Prime Minister Andrew Holness released a statement calling Charles a monarch who remembers the bonds of service and sacrifice. Barbados, which removed the monarchy just 3 years ago. So opposition leaders demand a referendum on restoring royal ties. Specifically because of Charles's actions, in Australia, even Republican activists admitted the king's intervention showed moral leadership that Australian politicians had failed to demonstrate. The diplomatic implications of staggering. Charles has essentially strengthened the Commonwealth's emotional connection to the crown while making elected British politicians look weak, cowardly, and morally compromised. Foreign Office sources, speaking on condition of anonymity, described it as a diplomatic nightmare, where the king is winning international respect by making his own government look terrible. Inside City Hall, the atmosphere is pure chaos and barely controlled panic. Sadiq Khan's senior advisors are turning on each other in vicious recriminations. Deputy Mayor for Housing Tom Copley allegedly threw a folder across the conference room, screaming that Khan had destroyed Labour's London power base forever. Khan's chief of staff, David Bellamy, was overheard telling colleagues, "We've lost the narrative completely, and there's no way back from this." WhatsApp groups with names like Save London Labour and Postcom Planning are plotting leadership challenges and damage control strategies. Multiple sources confirm that at least 5 senior Labour figures in London are preparing leadership bids. The question isn't if Khan survives, it's how many days he has left. Witnesses who saw Khan after the king's housing announcement said he looked absolutely shattered, standing motionless in his office, staring at the River Thames for over an hour. Without speaking, one aide later described it as watching a man realize his entire career had just imploded, and there was nothing he could do to stop it.